Bo Bichette and the Toronto Blue Jays have agreed to a 3-year deal, avoiding any arbitration hearings until he becomes a free agent. Now, that may sound complicated. It's not an extension, but the relationship that has seemingly been rocky in the past has now kind of smoothened out. So we'll have that. And finally, Matt Gage has been released, and fans are puzzled. So we'll have that and much more in this episode of Jays Digest. What's up, Jays fans? I'm your host, Peter Vryonis, alongside host Nick Gosse, and we want to thank you for sticking by us in those couple of off days. We're glad to be back finally, and we want to thank you all for the support. And we also want to shout out LeBron James for breaking the NBA scoring record. Now, whether you're a LeBron fan or not, it's something to really marvel at. And we want you guys to let us know in the comments who's your favorite athlete of all time as well.
Yeah, like you said, let us know in the comments, and thank you again for bearing with us. I made the community post the other day. We ended up taking 2 days off. We obviously news was a bit slow for a while up until yesterday, but our schedules just weren't aligning, so we decided to take a couple of days off, especially with the big, the season is starting very, very soon. We'll have lots of content there. So thanks for bearing with us. Make sure to hit the subscribe button, and let's get into the first topic, which is Bo Bichette signs a multi-year deal. Like you said in the intro, it's not an extension. It is just a deal to avoid arbitration, so we're going to get that out of the way first. We still only have him for the 3 other years that's left, but I'll pop up the screenshot. Per sources, Blue Jays have now avoided arb with Bo Bichette on a multi-year deal. Terms still unclear, but sources said a 3-year term was under active discussion this week. And this was also followed up by Ben Nicholson-Smith later on the night, saying one industry source suggested something like $33.5 million would be a reasonable total for Bichette's 3 arbitration years in the range of 6, 11, and 16.5. So, Peter, I guess I'll let you have the floor now. What are your thoughts on this? I'm very, very happy. This is, it's a pretty big deal. It's obviously not an extension, so it's not a huge deal, but avoiding arbitration with someone who, seemed like a bit of a conflict is good.
Yeah, it's very good news. It's very, very good news. And it reminds me a lot of the Matt Chapman situation when the Jays acquired him from Oakland. People were confused because he signed a 2-year deal pretty much right away. But he still had 2 years of control. So everyone was saying, oh, is this an extension? Are they keeping Matt Chapman for an extra 2 years? That was not the case. They were basically just avoiding arbitration with him until he hits free agency. And that's the case with Bo Bichette here. The relationship seemed to have been strained. There were a lot of reports saying that front office was kind of fed up, and Bo Bichette was also fed up, and they couldn't reach an agreement. They were $2.5 million apart, and that was over half of the money that the Blue Jays wanted to offer him. So it was just a rocky situation, and you never want to do that with your star players, especially a shortstop star like Bo Bichette. So he gets a lot of flack for his defense, but at the end of the day, he's one of the best hitters in all of Major League Baseball, and by the time he's 28 years old, he's going to be contending for one of the hit leaders in Blue Jays history.
Yeah, and whether this makes him stay or makes him want to stay, or whether the Jays want to keep him is still unknown, but it's a step in the right direction. And this is from Shai Devi saying, as a file and trial team, Blue Jays could only avoid arbitration with a multi-year agreement. A 3-year term, which obviously Ben Nicholson-Smith reported, is expected. Buys out Bichette's remaining arb years, doesn't alter potential free agency. So I know a lot of fans out there on Twitter were excited initially because they thought that we extended him, 3 years past his arbitration years, but he's still only under control for 3 more years. But like you said, it's a very good step in the right direction. And here are some reasons. This was a thread done. It got some traction on Twitter about why, this is a great deal and obviously why it's a big deal. Basically just saying that obviously Bichette's a top-tier player. They earn more money. Not many players of this caliber. And there was a huge gap, like you said, Peter, a $2.5 million gap, which may not seem like a lot initially, but it is a lot considering what they were asking for. And if he continues to produce, there will be less precedent set. And essentially just means that it sets the tone for a potential longer-term extension going forward. It's kind of what this all boils down to, and it helps, mitigate some of the uneasiness, even if it's not an extension.
Yeah, exactly. And if Bo Bichette takes strides in his defense, which I'm sure he will, there's no player that works harder than him on the Blue Jays. And he wants to be great. He's got that dog in him, as we like to say nowadays. And I think he's got it in him, to become not an elite defender, but an average to above average defender. And if he can do that, then he's easily a top 4 shortstop in the game, I would say. So, and then that's where the 200 plus million contract comes in, maybe even 300 plus million. Who knows how the market is going to look like in 3 years. So if he can continue to make strides within those 3 years before he hits free agency, he's going to get paid. Now, whether it's by the Blue Jays or by someone else, he'll set himself up pretty nicely. And I'm expecting big things from Bo in 2023.
Yeah, I agree. And that's what it comes down to. If his defense can go up to league average, he instantly becomes a way more valuable player, probably 2 to 3 higher WAR than he had last season. And I guess to finish off this topic, since you brought it up, this is his Baseball Savant page from last year. And everything we've been saying, elite hitter, one of the best in the game, but obviously the defense is not good. Slightly below average arm and really, really bad outs above average. But that being said, those things are, he can fix that, especially working with Matt Chapman and obviously all the, coaches there all offseason. Hopefully he does well, and it'll be interesting to see. And let us know in the comments what your thoughts are on, I guess, just avoiding arbitration. But it's a happy day to be a Jays fan. Last night was. But we'll move on to now, which was a bit more, I guess, a less happy thing. This happened a few days ago. Matt Gage was released. Now, this was very, very interesting. And I guess I'll just pop up the screenshot, and then we'll get our opinions on Matt Gage and what we thought he could bring. We had a video on in the past, but he was officially released. Blue Jays have placed Matt Gage on unconditional release waivers per source. Gage was designated for assignment last week to open up a 40-man roster spot for Chad Green. And this essentially what this means is the Jays could have placed him on outright waivers, but released him instead, so Gage might have another gig lined up. Now, I'll just let you take the floor again. What are your thoughts on them releasing him? I assume maybe he has another gig in the MLB, maybe he has a gig overseas somewhere to where he wants to get released right away so he can go sign that, because they didn't put him through the waivers.
Yeah, the whole situation was just kind of weird to me. Like, why just outright release him when maybe he could clear
Yeah,
waivers and then you
yeah,
could put him back into the minors? So that was weird to me. He's a lefty, which the Jays don't have much of, and he looked good in his limited time with the Jays in 2022. But I don't know. I guess you got to think of the player as well in this situation. Even if they were to keep him, was there really a chance that he can contend for one of those spots in the bullpen? I don't think so. He was good last year, but he was good because the Jays needed someone out of desperation, and the depth that they have now is just unparalleled compared to what they've had in the past 5, 6 years in that bullpen. So I don't think there was any spot for Matt Gage. And if you can release a player and he can go get paid somewhere else and play a major role on another major league franchise, then you go ahead and do that and you don't hold him back. So good on the Blue Jays for doing that, and hopefully Matt Gage can find something stable with another major league team.
Yeah, you'd expect that Matt Gage requested this because otherwise it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense for the Blue Jays. And like you said,
Yeah.
the Blue Jays fortifying their bullpen this offseason and even on the trade deadline last season kind of set this up, put the writing on the wall for Matt Gage's, I guess, possibility to pitch as a Blue Jay, which would be very, very low, bearing a catastrophic, injuries and tons of stuff like that. But I don't know. I'm happy for Matt Gage, and hopefully he has another job lined up, whether it's in the MLB or elsewhere. But his obviously had a great, ERA last year, sub 2, I believe. But at the same time, his peripherals weren't really there. He doesn't throw super fast, and I think the Blue Jays are kind of aiming a bit higher, being a World Series team. So that'll be very, very interesting. Let us know what your thoughts are on that, because Twitter was in an uproar. And move on to the final topic right now, which is a very, very quick one, but we'll I'll get your opinion on this, Peter. It's just pretty simple. Alejandro Kirk, a picture of him was released, and he's looking in very, very good shape. And I'll pop it up here for you. People on Twitter are going crazy. So that's Alejandro Kirk. And he's looking very, very good. And obviously, we'll just take a minute I'll get your thoughts on, Peter, what you expect from Alejandro Kirk going forward next season. He looks to be in great shape, better shape than last year. People on Twitter are really excited about it. And he is an unbelievable player who probably doesn't get talked about enough, at least from me. I'm excited to see what he can do. He might be able to have an unbelievable year next year.
Yeah, I just want to touch on one more thing about Matt Gage before we
Sure.
move on to Kirk here. So when it comes to Matt Gage, yeah, like I said, he was released to make a spot for Chad Green. Now, people might be saying, why are we releasing a guy that can pitch, that's not hurt, for Chad Green, who's going to come back maybe by the All-Star break, maybe even later? Now, I'll tell you this, it's because you have Nate Pearson in the pipeline, you have Yosmer Zulueta, and you have the two Fernandez, Jr. and Julian Fernandez, who you signed as well. So all those guys have a better chance of making an impact at the major league level as opposed to Matt Gage. And on Alejandro Kirk, I'm expecting big things from him. He won't catch as much this year. I hope Danny Jansen can stay healthy, and he won't have to DH as much either because there's Brandon Belt. George Springer is going to get his days. And it's just there's more depth on the team to where Alejandro Kirk won't be spent by the time the All-Star break rolls around. And I think that's what happened to him last year. Everyone was saying, oh, it's because he's not in shape that he fell apart in the second half. I don't think so. I just think he played too much. Catching every single day in the major leagues is grueling. and then to go turn around and DH the next day after you just caught 9 innings is not the easiest thing to do. So I think Kirk will stay healthy and he'll be productive all season long. And because he won't have to do as much, Danny Jansen is going to shoulder a lot of the load behind the plate.
Yeah, and if he's in better shape, obviously that's a plus, and it's looking like he is, doing great with that. And I expect him to have a above 5 WAR season. I think he's going to be an all-star, and I think our catching duo. Can you imagine a world where both of our catchers were all-stars? It probably would never happen, but I could see it, at
Yeah.
every team in the MLB, we definitely have the best chance of that happening. But it'll be interesting to see. Let us know in the comments what your thoughts are on the, I guess, Alejandro, Kirk, and, pitchers and catchers report very, very soon, so we'll have tons of content on that. And again, thank you for bearing with us in our couple off days. I know a few guys were commenting on our videos before we even took the off days, saying that if you guys want to take one, we can, and we ended up taking a couple. But we're back. We'll be back with the consistent uploads, and we'll see you guys in tomorrow's video.
Yeah, we are rejuvenated and we're ready to go.